welcome everyone to Mayor Muriel Bowser's Budget Engagement Forum. We're so excited to see you all here tonight. And so without further ado, because I know that you're here to talk about your budget priority for the FY19 budget, I'd love to introduce Mayor Muriel Bowser to kick us off tonight.
Thank you, everybody. Well, good evening, everybody. It is so great to see you all here to kick off our fourth Budget Engagement Forum to talk about how we are going to invest in a growing city, in a city where more and more Washingtonians can participate in the prosperity of Washington. Isn't it wonderful to be at the University of the District of Columbia? So let me acknowledge all of the students of our University of the District of Columbia, all of the faculty of our University of the District of Columbia, and our board members who are responsible for making sure that we are advancing our university. And so many of the board members have joined us. I think that I've seen them all, but I want to acknowledge them. Let me recognize first my predecessor on the Ward 4 Council seat. Charlene Drew Jarvis is here, and that is our appointee on the board. Reggie Felton. Also, Board Member Felton. Board Member Deandra Jackson, thank you for being here. Board Member Jerome Shelton, thank you for being here. Board Member Anthony Tard, thank you for being here. Board Member Esther Barazzone, thank you for being here. Dr. Barazzone. Board Member Errol Schwartz, thank you for being here. And the chairman of the board, Chris Bell, thank you for being here. Thank you, Chris. And our university president, who's just done an outstanding job over the last several years leading this great university, President Ron Mason. Thank you, President Mason, for being here. I was also asked to acknowledge the 78th Charter Day for the Beta Kappa chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity, who are over here. So I want to thank those young men for representing for their chapter. And finally, I would like to recognize all the members of my cabinet and our team who are here to help facilitate these conversations. They're all around the perimeter of this room and also seated at your table. So please give them a round of applause. So we are here because we are officially right in the middle of budget season. And when we started out back in 2015, I committed then to make sure that we were hearing from the community with real community feedback before we went pencils down on the budget. My experience on the council had been that the community wasn't really involved in the preparation of the mayor's budget. The mayor made the budget and it was largely fixed by the time it got to the council. And then the community came down to the council to say what their priorities were and the things that they hoped would be changed. But we know then there's much less room to change at that point in the budget preparation process. So that's why we want to be here today. This is the second of our budget engagement forums for this year. We added a telephone town hall for seniors, which we conducted yesterday, where over 850 seniors dialed into a town hall and participated that way. Today, we're in Ward 3. We'll be in Ward 6 tomorrow and in Ward 8 on Saturday. So I hope that you will spread the word to your friends and neighbors and associates that they can participate in 2 remaining budget engagement forums. We have been very proud that we've been able to live up to the commitments that we've expressed over the last 3.5 years that have been reflected in our budget. A focus on affordable housing, a focus on investing in public education, in creating jobs for DC residents, and in protecting DC values that are so important to all of us. The thing that kind of changed in our time in office is we got a new president. We have new what we have, threats to our values. Changes even reflected in his budgets, and we have the opportunity to make sure that our budget reflects exactly the values of the residents of Washington, D.C. We are privileged to live and lead in this time in Washington, D.C. We're very strong fiscally, and we have the ability, unlike many of my colleagues in cities across the nation, to make significant investments that can change the trajectory for our citizens. And it is important that we are strategic, that our investments are helping to move people into the middle class, but also preparing our economy and our infrastructure for our growth so that we can continue to grow, but also enjoy a quality of life that we're all expect in our nation's capital. So what we're going to do tonight, and you have already started the hard work that we do around our dining room tables and kitchens each and every day, looking at the money that you have coming in, and deciding on how much money you want to go out. You make trade-offs when you do that at your home, and the same is true for what we do down at City Hall. The truth is we've had 21 balanced budgets in a row, and we have to do that. We've gotten fantastic marks on our audits, and in fact, in the last 3 years, we haven't had a single material weakness noticed by our auditor, which is also a good mark about how we use and spend our money and keep track of it too. So what we're asking you to do is just be as serious as you are with your own finances and helping us look at the big categories where we invest our money in the district. In education and public safety and jobs and economic opportunity and housing and our government operations and health and human services. What we're asking you to do is work with your neighbors who may be from different parts of the city, may be passionate about different issues, may be at different stages in their life, may be thinking of different ways that they need DC government to show up for them. Have that conversation, and then we're going to ask you to tell us how you would balance this $100 budget, because the exercise is exactly what we're going through right now. Where agency directors, they're like you. They have different backgrounds and things that they're responsible for. Where the deputy mayors have several agencies, and they're trying to figure out how they advance the budget. And the city administrator is responsible for putting it all together in a balanced way to make sure it reflects the priorities that we have discussed so that we can send a budget to the council that reflects everything that you've told us. So that's where we are, and I'm going to turn it over to the city administrator and our budget director to talk to you about our process and go through with you some of the specifics of the money that's coming in and the money that we know has to go out. So thank you very much for being here.
Good evening, everyone. So glad to see so many of you here tonight at our first budget engagement forum for the fiscal year 2019 budget. My name is Jenny Reed. I'm the Mayor's Director of Budget and Performance Management here in the district, and along with the City Administrator, help craft the Mayor's budget that gets delivered to the Council. So I want to spend just a minute talking to you about the process for our budget and how it gets put together and then how it gets executed. So if you look at the slide here, you'll see that right now we're in the preparation phase. So this is where everything begins. All the agencies about 2 months ago submitted to us their plans for how to spend their local dollars. We met with every agency. We walked through the pros and cons of all their decisions. And now we're putting forward those recommendations to the mayor. But before we do all of that, we come out and talk to you all. So right now, we're in the community engagement phase. So as we're putting together those recommendations from the mayor, we're doing town halls, we're doing these community engagement forums, and we're hearing from you, what are your priorities in the budget? We take that back, we use that feedback, put it together with what the agencies are recommending, and then ultimately recommend a budget to the mayor. From there, she makes the final decisions, and then we submit the budget to the DC Council. This year, we'll be submitting the budget on March 21st. Once it goes to the council, they hold a series of hearings on the budget. They do one general hearing on the entire budget, and then they have hearings on each individual agency, which the public is welcome to come testify at. The council then votes in the end of May. The mayor signs the budget into law. It then goes up to Congress for a little review, although we don't really like that, but they still do it. And then once they give their sort of final approval, we then start to execute. So on October 1st of every year, we begin our fiscal year. The dollars go into the agency's budgets, and they get to work implementing the key programs and services that you talked to us about tonight. Also through that year, the other side of my team kicks in the performance management side. So we want to make sure that all those dollars that you're telling us how we should allocate those, that those are getting spent well. They're getting spent effectively. They're achieving the outcomes that you think should be achieved. And so we're working with the agencies to make sure that's happening. Then finally, we get into the wrap-up period of accountability where we have our audit, and as the mayor mentioned, we've had 22 consecutive clean audits. We had our third year of no material weaknesses, and we wrap up the fiscal year. And then before you know it, we start it all over again. So let me tell you just a little bit about the nuts and bolts of the district's budget, because we are very unique compared to most other places. So the district is actually a city, state, county, and school district all rolled into one. We do all of those services. If you were anywhere else, they would be divided amongst the state, the city, the county, but we do them all. To support all these diverse programs and services, we have a $13.4 billion operating budget. This is comprised of about $10 billion in local funds, about $4 billion in federal grants, and $1 billion to support our capital infrastructure program in fiscal year 18. And before I turn it over to the city administrator, I just want to show you how those dollars are broken out in the current fiscal year to help you think about when you're allocating your dollars, how would that change the current allotment of funds? So our biggest area of allocation of funds is in health and human services. This is where we provide a lot of our critical services, for example, like Medicaid, for healthcare, for human services, for homelessness prevention. We also spend about $2.5 billion on education. This includes funding for support like DC Public Schools, the public charter schools, and our own University of the District of Columbia. We also spend about $1.7 billion on government operations. So this is like the plows to pick up the snow. This is DPW to pick up your garbage. We spend about $1.3 billion in public safety. This is your Metropolitan Police Department, fire and emergency medical services. We spend about $325 million for housing. So this is your Housing Production Trust Fund. This is your local rent supplement program. This provides affordable housing for residents throughout the city. And then we spend about $453 million promoting jobs and economic opportunity through programs like the Summer Youth Employment Program and Career Connections. So now let me turn it over to the city administrator to tell you a little bit about our priorities in FY18.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Jenny. As the mayor said, it is budget season in the District of Columbia. And so we are in the midst of fiscal year 18, and this helps us plan for fiscal year 19. The budget is one of the most important things that we do, and the mayor said it really speaks to our priorities and our value as a community. And so our budget is in these 5 major categories that Jenny talked about. And so our effort and our priority is to further our achievements in education, expand our reach and help more people in our health and human services area, strengthen our public safety activities, make sure that we have efficient and safe transportation, and ensure access to jobs and economic opportunity. So I want to I want to try to prepare you for how you're going to spend your $100, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the kinds of things that go into each of these areas. And so improving education has been a key priority for this administration. We have made unprecedented investments in our educational initiatives, including $174 million to our teachers for retroactive salary increases and a new contract for them for the first time in 5 years. $1 million for children to go to arts exhibitions and performances, $6 million for out-of-school time programming, $1.6 billion in education services to 91,000 charter and traditional public school students, $78 million for programs and services that support this university, the University of the District of Columbia. $38.9 million for parks and recreation programs, $154 million in early learning, and $38.4 million for library services and materials. In the area of health and human services, this is really where we invest in the safety net for individuals in the District of Columbia, making sure that those who need support and help and interventions have those. And so we spend about $10 million in revising the TANF policy. This is to make sure that people that need cash assistance can continue receiving that cash assistance beyond the federal limits that are in place by the federal government. $12 million we invest in programs that divert young people from the criminal justice system. $1 million for the Joyful Food Markets Initiative, which brings fresh food to areas who lack those stores and opportunities. $3 million to continue preventative adaptations for seniors to stay in their homes. So we're able to come in and help people, seniors age in place and make fixes to their bathroom, to their kitchen, install ramps in their homes. $130 million so that we can deliver on the mayor's commitment and the community's expectation that we close DC General, which we will do this year, and make homeless rare, brief, and non-recurring. In the public safety arena, we know that safe streets and safe neighborhoods make great cities. And so we're proud to invest $8.9 million to help recruit and retrain officers, nearly $5 million to hire more firefighters and EMTs, $4.5 million to hire additional correctional officers and social workers in the DC jail, $2.3 million to help our returning citizens transition back to the community and have the supports that they need, $1.4 million to hire participants who are on public assistance receive good paying government jobs so that they can lessen their need for public assistance, $1 million to help divert individuals from having to call 911 and we connect them with primary care resources. $1.3 million to create the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, which was a key priority for the NEAR Act. $500,000 to have security cameras for residents to put in their homes and businesses for their homes. $21.5 million in capital investments to make sure that our first responders have the equipment that they need. We talked a little bit about housing, and we know that affordable housing is an important priority in this community and is really something that people expect us to do more on. This mayor doubled the amount of housing resources in the Housing Production Trust Fund, and so since 2015, we've invested $100 million each and every year in the Housing Production Trust Fund. $10 million, that is worth a clap. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. $10 million so that we can help preserve housing at affordable rates, $3.5 million to support tenants' rights, $17 million to support our cultural economy, and then $15 million to help families afford a down payment and buy their home in the District of Columbia. In the category of jobs and economic opportunity, we've invested $2.5 million to help entrepreneurs start new businesses in DC, $18.6 million for the Marion Barry Summer Youth Program, which includes transportation subsidy for those individuals and job opportunities for 21-year-olds to 24-year-olds, $10 million in training programs targeting residents that have barriers to employment, and $1.8 million for apprenticeship programs to help connect people to jobs. The Deputy Mayor for Greater Economic Opportunity loves to hear that investment. And then the last area that I want to just talk about is government operations. This is a critical part of the government's infrastructure that really serves as the backbone for what we do. This is where we spend $3.7 million in snow removal, $950,000 in our effort to become the 51st state of the United States. I knew statehood would get a clap. Absolutely. $1.5 million to make sure that we have enough resources in waste collection to pick up the trash consistently on time every week, and then $300,000 so that we can be transparent about how we spend money and what we spend money on for our open government initiatives. So I'm going to invite the Deputy Chief of Staff up to give you the instructions for what to do at your table, and I want you to think about the kinds of investments that I talked about in these categories as you think about where you would allocate this $100. This really is what we are doing in this season, in this month, each and every day at the Wilson Building at City Hall, trying to figure out how to fund all of these priorities and meet the needs of the residents of the District of Columbia. So let me turn it over to Lindsay.
Well, thank you, City Administrator. And what you've done is you've just heard from the team of people that live and breathe budget. So they think about this budget all the time, day and night. And now you've got the resources, you've got the toolkit to help you make some of these critical decisions that we have to make as well. And so in front of you, you each have this an individual game. It's a paper-sized version, a letter-sized version of this. And you've got 6 different buckets. The city administrator just explained all of those different buckets and the priorities that fit within each of them. And now you, as an individual resident of the District of Columbia, a taxpayer, you have $100 to allocate. How would you allocate that $100 amongst those 6 priorities? And so what I want you to do is go ahead and fill out that game and then talk as a table about why you identified the priorities that you did. The one thing that I want to remind everybody here tonight is that everybody's voice is equally important to this conversation. And so some of you are very passionate about some subject, others are here just to listen. We want to hear from each and every one of you, and we want to make sure that your table hears from each and every one of you as well. And so tonight we've got facilitators at every single table. Facilitators, would you mind raising your hands? All right, and the facilitators are here to help walk through this process. And so you've got 20 minutes right now to have a conversation amongst your table and talk about those priorities. Also, there's some other people along the edge of the room here. I see you. Don't think that you don't have a job tonight. A lot of them are cabinet members and members of the mayor's administration, and they're going to be walking around and talking a lot about their priorities, advocating a little bit probably for some of their offices, but also helping you think about some of those tough questions that we face every day in the administration as we try to make sure that we balance the budget. So good luck, and here's to engaging.
So what we want to do, that big tablet that you see held up there, that is two-sided. So for the first side, what you want to put on it is what is the biggest allotment for each category, right? So for each category, from everybody's individual sheet, what is the biggest amount for each category? And then flip it over, and you've got to build a consensus budget that you can only spend $100, okay? We're also going to hear now from our deputy mayors so that they could pitch you on putting money into their budgets. So first up, is the Deputy Mayor for Greater Economic Opportunity, Courtney Snowden, right here in the middle of the room.
Good evening, everybody, or as I like to say, hey, y'all. Now, I know y'all are thinking a lot about where to put money, and some of you are thinking education should be my top priority. One table I already know is raising taxes. Education is important, it's true. But let me tell you something. We're building a lot of affordable housing in the District of Columbia, right? And that's important. We're getting a lot of people trained for jobs, and you know why that's important? So they can afford that affordable housing that we're building. And so if you're not helping me by adding money to the budget for jobs, economic opportunity, and training, we're gonna have a real tough time keeping the great people of Washington, D.C. right here. So please, put your money where my mouth is and give me more than 10%.
All right, next up is the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, Brian Kenner.
Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? Good. Okay, so my job is to make everybody in here money. And it takes money to make money. Part of the responsibilities in my cluster are increasing tax revenues in the District of Columbia, increasing access to jobs for DC residents, and in increasing affordable housing. That means that I've got to make sure that I have enough resources to be able to devote to getting grocery stores east of the river, for being able to provide additional transportation options in all parts of our city, and to make sure that the economic vibrancy that we see in one part of the city, that you can see in the other part of the city. Now, if you all are behind housing in particular, I would just like us to engage in a little bit of a chant, which is housing. Housing, housing, housing. Thank you very much.
All right, just to follow that, let's go to Anna Smith, Deputy Mayor for Education. I think Deputy Mayor Kenner cut off your mic. But let's get a mic out there.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you. I am so glad to be here. Thank you all for being here this evening. My name is Anna Smith. I have the privilege of serving as Interim Deputy Mayor for Education, and I'm excited to tell you about why education, as my favorite table over here, should be number one. I have the privilege of overseeing DC public schools, the public charter schools, public libraries, parks and recreation, the Office of the State Superintendent for Education, and the great University of the District of Columbia. So I want to say a big thank you to President Mason and all of his team who are here and for welcoming us to this beautiful space. As you can see, we are committed to state-of-the-art investments in public education. We have seen unprecedented investments and improvements in our schools, but we know that there is so much more work to be done. And so we think that improving the opportunities for young people for college, career, and life by ensuring that we provide great schools, that we make sure kids get to and from school safely every single day, and that we have opportunities for learning before and after school and during the summer is going to put our kids on the pathway to the middle class and to success. So every dollar you invest in education today is an investment in a lifetime. Thank you.
And just a quick commercial break. Do you know what home court advantage is? It's when the Deputy Mayor for Education speaks, and then you let the president of UDC greet everyone.
It's good to be in your own house. We think it's time to complete the pathway to the middle class. Public education doesn't stop at the 12th grade. It goes on through your public institution of higher learning, which is the University of the District of Columbia. Just to give you some numbers, Mayor, the nation invests about 5.8% of its budget in public higher education. Maryland invests about 4.5% of its budget in public higher education. Virginia invests about 3.8% of its budget in higher education. The district invests 1.1% of its budget in public higher education. And so we've made a proposal to try to raise that to 1.78%. And if that's possible, then we think that we can put a lot more people on the pathway to the middle class.
Well, that is hard to beat. And I adore you, and I adore the deputy mayors, but I have to say that our biggest and most important asset in our government and in the district is all of you, our human capital. So I am the Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services. I oversee the incredible work that this administration is doing when it comes to healthcare coverage, when it comes to homeless services, our TANF reform. And if you believe truly all the assets that we need to create and maintain so that we create the pathways to the middle class, I need all of you to put 100% in Health and Human Services.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Chung. Next up, and our final Deputy Mayor, is going to be Kevin Donahue, who's Public Safety, Justice, and Operations.
Hey, I'm Kevin Donahue. I've been to every budget engagement forum since the mayor's been in office. And so I know in public safety I'm not going to ask for all 100 cents because we measure them based on the past in probably nickels and dimes. I appreciate it. But what the mayor will say, if you get to the root cause of violence and safety, all the categories ultimately make us safer: education, mental health, substance abuse, jobs. But I'm not here to advocate for the other deputy mayors. So I include police, fire, EMS, the 911 system, our medical examiner, the crime lab. Almost every aspect of the NEAR Act is within public safety. And the one thing I'll say, I moved here as a teenager 30 years ago. And a number that was much higher than it is now is how much homicide and crime and violence that we have in DC. It still besets certain communities that we have to focus on. Another number that's bigger now is the amount of money we can put into our budget. And I would say those two things are created. So the ultimate way to get what everyone wants is to increase the size of the pie. And don't forget, if we do not have a safe city, we probably won't have that pie growing. And if you really want that pie to shrink again, you cannot forget about operations. So what is this? Trash collection, snow removal, hiring people, letting out contracts. In other words, in most cities, most of what the government does. We here are a state, a county, and a city. So when you look at that, don't measure it in just nickels and dimes. Think about what we need to have an efficient, well-run city.
Great. And just before we start the group discussion, I also want to acknowledge with us the Interim Chancellor of DC Public Schools, Amanda Alexander. She'll be coming around to the tables to introduce herself as the night goes on. So now the group discussion. So remember, the first side, what you want to do is you want to put what the highest amount of any individual sheet, which category you put it in, put that highest amount. So if education, if somebody had, I don't know, 50, put 50 on there, and the highest amounts for all of the different categories. Then flip over the sheet, and then you only have $100 as a group. $100 as a group. All right? Great, let's get started. Thanks, everyone.
That's the highest on education. Can I ask for jobs and economic opportunity, how much was allocated? Who might have the highest?
All right, everyone, we're wrapping up. All right, everybody, we're ready to start hearing from the tables how you spent your $100. The mayor's up here. She's going to listen. She's taking notes. We want to hear how each group spent their $100, and we're going to hear from a couple groups. So let's have everybody's attention, and we're going to go over to by the windows. And we're going to hear from the table. Who's going to speak for the table? Why don't you introduce yourself and say which ward you're from.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Everybody's attention, please. Right over here.
Okay, our table 51 assigned the highest percentage of the budget to Health and Human Services. Yay! And as Miss Senior DC 2014, my focus is on the senior population in the district, so I was very glad to see that. One of the things we're concerned about is supporting senior access to the Affordable Care Act. support in ensuring that they get signed up and get their coverage. Support for the DC Office on Aging. Our senior population is growing. We are living longer, and the senior wellness centers are wonderful, but they're bursting at the seams, and we'd like to see some help there. Also for senior transportation to medical services and appointments.
Great, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
And also, let me get back to the second highest. She's telling me education. Education was our second highest budget item at $20. And we want to support higher education. We want to support more vocational training. We of course want to see more after-school care. So there are a lot of things in education that we feel need to be done. A lot has been done, and we want to see much more.
Thank you,
Great,
Ms. Johnson.
thank you so much.
So, John, and Mayor, Ms. Johnson joined the senior budget forum last night, or yesterday too, so she participated in that as well. We've got some UDC students here that are interested in giving their budget up.
Hello, my name is Aaliyah Carter. I live in Ward 4. I am a student here at the University District of Columbia, and I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated Beta Iota chapter. Our highest went to education, of course, because education is very important because, you know, we are less funded. We need more investments. We have elevators shut down. We have one of our buildings being condemned, which has our library and also other classes in it as well. So education is very important to us. The second one is housing because, you know, there's not a lot of affordable houses here for members, people living in DC. The second two was jobs and economic opportunities because without education and job economics, you will not have jobs if you have an education. Health and human services is very important because not a lot of people are aware, and mental health is very, very important because a lot of people commit suicides because they don't know what is wrong or they're diagnosed differently. Also, we have government operations at 10 and public safety at 10 as well.
All right, great.
Education is important. Thank you.
How many tables had education as your top spending area? All right, great. Next up, let's go to Judah's table right up front here. Judah, who's going to speak for you guys?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, while they figure that out, let's go back to Nick.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Heyman. I live in Ward 1. We really had a lot of trouble because we thought that all of our funding needed to be higher and we needed more money for all of the programs because DC is a really awesome city and we want to support all of the people who live here. And in our negotiations, we thought about what was actually being funded and at what % of the budget and tried to adjust from there. So education got the most because at 28%, we really think that if our schools are strong, then our city will be strong. Public safety went down to $10%. We doubled jobs and economic opportunity because we think that job training is a huge component in keeping our city strong and making sure that people can actually work at the jobs that are being offered to them. We added more money to housing because there is a huge affordable housing crisis in DC, and we want to see the money that goes to developers actually trickle down to actually help residents and people who need to afford the housing that is not market rate but lower because that's what people in DC can afford. For government operations, we put 15.1%. Because we want to make sure that programs and issue areas that have been very big issues in the past year, like paid family leave, are supported. And we also want to see fair elections fully funded so that we can get people in office that are across the spectrum when it comes to economic backgrounds. And unfortunately, that left us with 23% for health and human services. But we really think that it is super important. So we hope that when big companies like maybe Amazon come to DC, that they don't get tax write-offs, so that we can make sure that all of these programs get funded fully.
And just real quick, what did that add up to?
$100.10.
All right. Well, maybe later we'll ask you where you came up with that 10 cents. Let's go over here to Lisa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Pointer. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and I'm an elementary education major here at the University of the District of Columbia. So we are actually going to work our way up. And before you don't hear anything about your department, or you may not hear what you want, we're going to explain it in the end, and it will all make sense. So take this journey with us. So we're going to start with jobs and economic opportunity. We're going to mirror what the mayor has at 4%. We're going to keep that the same. We think that's a great number. Then we're going to go up to public safety. While we do understand that you need new officers, we think that maybe that 2% could come under the educational aspect. So we're still doing the same thing. We're just allocating the funds a little bit differently. So we're going to take that to 10. Then we're going to go to housing. We're going to do 12 for housing, 12 for government operations. And then next up will be health and human services. So health and human services will be allocated 27, while education will receive 35. So we have to look at education and what does that really mean, and how do all of these different departments, how can they benefit under the educational sector, right? So if we have educated citizens, if we have more workforce programs, all of those trainings, whether it's A+, AutoCAD, construction, whatever it is, social work, LPNs, all of that can fall under education. So you're still doing the same thing, but how can we work across the departments to make sure that we're meeting the needs where the budget is greater?
Okay, so you increased the education budget. What's the number?
35 for education.
35. That's up from what, 23?
Up for 23.
Okay, and so how much of that increase is dedicated to UDC?
I think that it should be equally at from K through college.
Okay.
So because we do have students in wards 7 and 8 who do not have the same quality of education as residents in other wards. So we want to make sure that we're equitable when we're allocating money. We do have new schools that
so
are.
we're going to look at your education increase, and a percent goes to all grade levels.
It should be equitable.
Okay, I got it.
Everyone needs something, but how can it be equitable?
I got it. Thank you. Let's give our student a big round of applause.
All right, so we're out of time, so we won't hear from any more tables. I'm just kidding. Let's go to Nick. Nick.
Ooh.
Okay, thanks. Hi, I'm Andrea Weinberg, and I'm here from Ward 1. And I'm representing the best table ever over here. Very diplomatic. Our big priority areas were education, jobs and economic opportunity, and housing. And we'll start with education. We noticed at our table the grave mistake that UDC was not explicitly mentioned here, which we assume was just an oversight, but we made sure to note it. And also continuing educational opportunities for those older seniors amongst us. And then under jobs and economic opportunity, we wanted to stress again here that we think that education is the pathway to the middle class. We also included tax rebates and small business incentives, and funding programs like paid family leave and equal pay as well. Housing, while we're very grateful for the money in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, at the end of the day, that is a drop in the bucket in a large, wealthy city like ours. So we also emphasized housing here, particularly for senior facilities, but also across the board. Under government operations, we have a big emphasis on sustainability and climate risk mitigation at our table. And then also we noted here the DC Fair Elections Fund, which we would like to see funded because, so we were saying that, it doesn't really matter what our priorities are if all the folks elected to office are all rich or are all, the same kinds of folks. So we really want to emphasize this funding here to see a more democratic process play out at the city level. And those were our big priorities. Thank you.
Great, fantastic. And your Health and Human Services, tell us that again? 15. Okay.
So John, I just wanted to point out on the education slide, there is a section for the University of the District of Columbia. Just wanted to make sure that everybody saw that that budget item is on there.
Okay, so great. Let's go to the next table. Adrian.
All right, we have Catherine here.
Hi, how's it going? Hi. So, hey guys. All right, so I'm part of DC Education Coalition for Change, and I just wanted to advocate for education. We had a really passionate group here, and I really appreciate being here with them. So our top three, I kind of want to go into our top three. That's what we really were passionate about. The first and second, we kind of tied 25 and 25 in housing and education. Education, yep.
Okay, Chancellor Alexander, could you go give high fives to that table? Get on over there.
So for education, we want to disrupt the school to prison pipeline, right? And so that's definitely a huge deal. We also want to, we've heard a lot of members that are parents and just different teachers and students, they want to increase some money on after school programming and culturally responsive teaching. So those are the really three things that DEC and also we kind of talked about here for under education. The other one is housing and also health and human services. So for housing, we really talked about, we had a really passionate person here. I learned a lot from her today. So she really wants everyone to really reach the middle class and to have simply have affordable housing. So definitely that's huge for us over here in this table. And lastly, we want to fight chronic homelessness. So that's why we really put 20 under health and human services. So that's, and then we just divided everything else.
Great, fantastic.
All right, thank you.
And did that add up to 100? To 100? Yes, it did. Now, not to reward bad behavior, but did any group go over 100? Uh-oh. Devon, let's hear from them. Behind you, the one that went over. Eugene's table. Yeah, right behind you. All right, walk us through it.
Christine I'm gonna hand it over to Christine, who's gonna walk us through our budget.
So before I start with our final tally, let me just say that we started out at 264. And I think the big consensus...
Did anybody start out higher than 264? Okay, all right.
You know, I think one of the big conversations that we had at our table that we really had to get through is that being progressive is not cheap. And you know, we may have to work, we may not be able to go out to dinner every night, and we may have to work a little extra overtime, but we did end up at 110, and we do think with a couple creative tax revenue generators that maybe the city can get to that. But just sort of going through what we did end up with, education, we went 1% over what the current budget is, and the reason that we didn't go any higher is because looking down at the bottom at the health and human services, what a lot of our schools need happen here. And so a lot of these are very integrated, and a lot of them really rest on the shoulders of our health and human services department. So to be quite honest, we started out at 95 for the health and human services, and there were sacrifices made in other columns. We had a very, very strong advocate
you can head over to the table.
The original numbers or the final? So yes, so 24 for education, 10 for public safety. Again, sort of looking down at health and human services, the NEAR Act, a lot of the solutions and issues with our public safety. It's not arresting our way out of the problem. It's really providing for our homeless, providing for our mental, people with mental disorders. There's just many other ways for us to get to this goal without police forcing. Jobs and economic opportunity, again, 10. Sorry, thank you, keep me on task. Yes. Again, you know, this one, you know, a lot of these problems are integrated. Education can capture a lot of that jobs and economic opportunity. And I think one of the things that we talked about is that there's a lot of cost recovery in jobs and economic opportunity, both through generating businesses, generating workforce, creating employment, and same with housing. Again, we put 10, but we can do a lot of cost recovery, and we can also be smart about our investments.
And can you tell us how much you guys came up to at the end?
110.
110. And did you guys discuss any ways?
But with raising revenue through taxes.
Yeah. Through taxes.
And I actually, and clawbacks on current cuts.
All right,
Yeah.
great.
I'm actually, for the revenue part, I'm gonna pass it to our biggest advocate for that. I wanna.
All right, let's hear from.
So I'm gonna actually.
All right, let's hear from. We're gonna hear from one more table. All right, who wants to go next? Which table? Which table? Right here or back there? 19. Which one? Which one? 19.
Nobody sounds that excited. Who's excited to share their table?
All right, Nick. All right, we're gonna go, Nick. We're gonna go to your table, but we're gonna go back to the back after. All right. So we'll go one back here. We'll do one in the middle, and then one over to the right. Okay. So we'll start that table in the corner. But Nick, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Leona Harris. I am a math professor here at UDC. And we all felt really strongly about our percentages, and so we spent most of our time focusing on the numbers. Of course, first let me say that our original bottom line was 165, and we wanted to keep that, but we paid attention to instructions. And but we have education as our highest at $30 out of 100. And we feel very strongly that we need to understand the categories that fit in education, and that the bulk of the money should go towards our schools, and we should increase the budget for UDC from 1% up to what should be reasonable, like 5%. And I want to point out that that's up from the current budget of 23. Our second most important category for our table was jobs and economic opportunity. We have that at $20, which is up from 4. And we really feel strongly that if you put the money in these two categories, then we don't need the money in the other categories, that some of the issues that we have in the city will go down. The next important category was housing at $20 because we need affordable housing in the city. And then obviously we had to sacrifice everything else. So we have public safety at 10, government operations at 8, and health and human services at 12.
Great, thank you. All right, let's hear from that table. Adrian?
Okay, we have Eric from UDC. Oh, you're gonna own it? Okay. Well, I need to see the board. Hi, I'm Eric Harris. I'm a graduate student in the architecture program under causes here at UDC. I wanted to point out that you guys inadvertently forgot to add UDC to education under here, so I just wanted to point that out. So when we did our tallies, we originally came to 173. We started at education with 50, public safety 15, jobs and opportunities 25, housing 33, government operations 16, and health and human services 34. What we ended up with is education 35, public safety 12, jobs 5, housing 20, government operations 1, and health and human services 27. And the reason why we made these compromises, we believe that education is very vital, especially starting from young and obviously up to college level. And also, too, we wanted to ensure that there are after-school programs and other things in place for education. As far as housing, housing is a major issue, and being in the architecture program, we actually look at design and how we can design sustainable places and affordable places for people. And even with health and human services, I mean, our main jobs as architect is health, welfare, and safety. So we want to ensure that people with mental health, homeless, people who are homeless, and also senior citizens, making sure that we take care of them.
All right.
Are we talking about government operations?
I think it was pretty clear from the one.
Oh, so for the government operations, we put our money where the people are, and not in government.
Okay. All right.
Lindsay. We've got Ashley here from Ward 2. Ashley?
Hello, my name's Ashley Gorsica. I'm here representing Ward 2. And so I would like to echo some of the sentiment that was made earlier that we need to have a conversation about raising revenue, that a budget works in two parts, raising revenue and expenses, and we have the ability to make sure we fund everything that we want and need. So that is my first. So we wanted to start by funding Health and Human Services at $46.75. We were at 50, but we had to finagle our way around. We think if we want to keep to our commitment to making homelessness brief, rare, and non-recurring, that we have to invest in health and human services. And we can end chronic homelessness in DC. It will take 0.5% of the budget, and we have the ability to do that. So next up, we have education. We funded $24.50. Again, education is very important, so we know we need to put our money there. And next, we have government operations at $12.75, public safety at $9.50, jobs and economic opportunity at $3.75, and housing at $2.75. So thank you.
Thank you. Great.
Thanks.
And then Devon. And then we're going to
Mr. Reggie Felton. Hey, UDC. All right, this was tough because once everything's related, and I think we all agree if we pushed hard enough that if you don't have that education, it's not going to prepare you for the jobs, you're not going to be able to afford the houses, and you'll be healthier. So let's keep straight on that one. All right, when we go through our figures, education, we gave 30. It was an increase of 20%. Public safety, we decreased it from $12 to $10. We doubled the investment in jobs and economic opportunity. Oh. We also reduced, we increased housing to 6%, $6.
He's going to hold it for you. There you go.
No, this is the one we want. And health and human services, unfortunately, we decreased it by $30. But we understand that, again, with that investment in education, it'll pay off. Now, the other thing we said is we've got to focus some more on revenue sharing, private-public partnerships, because the tax base may not be able to handle for a while all the increases that we need. So we just need to figure out what other sources we might generate for our city so that we can make this thing work.
All right.
And I remind you, you didn't have UDC there either, but it's okay. Thank you.
So what do you think? One more table, or is that it, folks? One more. Hold on. All right, one more. Let's hear from this young lady up front.
Okay, so I recognize everyone wants to get out of here. The only reason I'm really doing this is because Ms. Priscilla left, and UDC wanted me to be passionate with them and for them. So, our budget, we got up to 159. So my name is Ashley, representing DC Education Coalition for Change. However, I'm going to represent this table right now. So we decided, and it was a very hard decision for Health and Human Services. We did have to do a cut, but we realized that in the numbers, something that was recognized was investing in programs to divert young people from the criminal justice system, which we felt like we can put some of that money into the education system. So it's not really taken away, it's just reallocating. So we did housing 3%, we doubled that, so we took that up to $6 for us, so 6. And then we took jobs and where we at? Economic to 10, so also over 2 times. Education, we went up half, right? So from 23 to 35, we really wanted to do that 40. But then for Health and Human Services, we took that down 13, so we have 30. And then for government operations and retirement, we took that to 8, and public safety at 7. So we hope that that justifies and keep it within the same budget lines that we have, but just shifting it around. Thank you.
Give yourselves a big round of applause. That was a very energetic budget session. And I think it was very representative of what we do each and every day, because you know what you heard tonight? You heard some passionate advocacy, right? And that's what policymakers are dealing with each and every day. I see some purple shirts, some red shirts, a lot of red shirts, some blue shirts, people representing a lot of different causes. And that is the feedback that we want to get. So you also made some tough decisions. I heard some surprising cuts. I heard from some tables several significant cuts to Health and Human Services. I saw a lot of big increases in education. I heard a lot of responsiveness to what we heard from our UDC students. But some went up a lot, some went up a little bit, some dedicated, some just said spend it equitably across public education. And so, thank you. So those were all important. We heard about some other specific programs and how we can add them to our budgets. Some of you left your tables to tell me specifically about your project that you came to talk about. We heard about seniors, paid family leave, after-school programming. We heard some people who want to raise taxes. Okay, now the tax raisers, which tax do you want to raise? Tell me, I want to know. So which taxes we want to raise? Corporate taxes. Okay, that's one. What was that? Commuter tax, we don't have that, but I wish we did. That would solve a lot of problems. Estate taxes. Income taxes, thank you. All right, I just want to ask that question because you know what? We got a big metro bill to pay. It's bigger than it ever has been. And so we want to make sure that we're thinking of ways that are fair and that are going to allow us to continue to invest in our metro system, okay? So we're going to keep that. I saw one table that had a huge number on government operations right there, and that was all about public transportation and how we continue to get people around our city. So I want to really thank you for being here and sharing all of these ideas, and you can see the tough job that we have. We're going to continue to talk, continue to work on balancing the budget, and look forward to presenting a fair budget to the council in the coming weeks. So thank you, everybody.